Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. I want to thank you in advance for joining us today. My name is Lexi Johnson. I am our professional lines underwriter here at CID Insurance, and I'm joined by Alexa Hill, our marketing manager, who's running everything smoothly behind the scenes, making sure everything goes well. Today we have a lot to cover. We're diving into a topic that has become increasingly critical for every insurance agency and broker, and that is the importance of offering cyber and EPL coverage. So in today's environment, businesses of all sizes are facing sophisticated cyber threats and employment-related lawsuits at record levels. Clients who once viewed these coverages as nice to have are now realizing they're essential for protecting their operations. So we're really going to cover why these policies matter now more than ever, what we're seeing in the marketplace on our end, and how positioning these coverages can strengthen your client relationships and your revenue for that matter. Before we dive in and get started, I just want to cover some webinar logistics. So I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with this, but all participants on the webinar will be muted, but your voice is still very important to us. So please type out any questions that you may have in the chat room. We'll stop and answer them throughout the webinar. And then if we don't have time to address all questions, I want to be respectful of time. I'll make sure to respond to you after the webinar and answer any remaining questions. Okay, let's walk through what we're going to cover today and what you're going to take away from this session. So first, we're going to define employment practice liability and cyber liability insurance in clean, practical terms, so you have a solid foundation, whether you're relatively new to these lines or just need a refresher. Second, we're going to explore the current state of the insurance marketplace for both EPL and cyber. I'm going to share what's happening with capacity, pricing, underwriting appetites, which is really valuable information you can use in conversations with your clients. Third, we're going to examine today's claim trends, emerging risks. You're going to see real-world examples of why these coverages are no longer optional for most businesses. And fourth, we will tackle one of the biggest challenges brokers face today, which is common client objections and hesitation around buying these coverages. And then finally, and this is the most important part, you'll walk away with practical tools, sales scripts, talking points, objection handlers, and strategies that you can start using immediately to confidently present these coverages and improve your quote to bind ratio. And really by the end of this webinar, our goal is simple. We want to make you much more comfortable and effective at offering cyber and EPL to your clients, so you can better protect them while also growing your own book of business. So before we go deeper, I just want to quickly introduce these two coverages that we're focusing on today. So EPL, Employment Practices Liability, it's really designed for any business with employees. And your cyber liability is relevant virtually for every business today. I mean, think of every business. Almost all depend on information technology to get the job done. If you think about internet, desktops, servers, email, cloud computing, and more, truly every business, despite size, are exposed to a cyber attack. So we're really going to dive into that later on, but the key takeaway is that EPL is about people risks and cyber is about data and technology risks. And most businesses actually need both because they address completely different exposures that fall outside of your standard GL policy. So we're going to break these down in much more detail. Okay, so first, let's talk about EPL, right? EPL overview, what it is, and who it protects. At its core, EPL protects businesses from claims alleging wrongful employment practices. So this is not your standard slip and fall liability. This is really about how a company treats its employees. The primary coverages include some of the most common and expensive claims that we see today, and that's your wrongful termination, harassment, discrimination, retaliation, and related allegations such as defamation or failure to promote. So who does this apply to? This is a common question actually we get. EPL coverage, it's intended to respond to claims brought by current employees, former employees, job applicants, and in many cases, independent contractors. And then I just want to touch quickly on your third-party EPL. This extends protection when non-employees, so such as customers, clients, vendors, or other outsiders, they file claims alleging discrimination or harassment by your client's staff. So that's what the third-party EPL is. This is definitely something to check on any EPL quote that you receive. And just speaking to my California brokers, it's excluded on a lot of quotes or policies. The third party is excluded in California. So just make sure to always double check if that's included or not when you get a quote. So now that we understand, what EPL is, let's talk about why it matters to your clients and to you as a broker. So why EPL matters: risks, costs, and real world impacts. In today's environment, these claims are frequent, emotionally charged, and very costly to defend. And that's even if the allegation is groundless. So here's the reality. EPL claims are among the most common lawsuits employers face today, yet EPL coverage is still one of the least purchased policies. So that's pretty powerful. The financial impact also is significant. I mean, the average cost to defend an EPL claim can range from $25,000 to $150,000 or more, and that's before any settlement is even paid. Even your frivolous claims can cost tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees alone. Then there's also the time factor. Cases, they often take 229 days or more on average to resolve. And think about that time. That's months of management distraction, employee moral issues, and business disruption. So let me give you a real world claim example. A restaurant was sued by a former server for racial discrimination, and this case settled for $150,000. So the bottom line for your clients is this: they're exposed every single day they employ people, and the risk are only growing. So really, let's talk about where EPL stands in today's marketplace, because this is where things get really actionable for you as a broker. So EPL today in our marketplace. Firstly, here's a very powerful statistic to share with your clients. Businesses are 3 times more likely to be sued by an employee than experience a fire. And that's according to the Berkeley Asset Protection. So think about that. Most business owners wouldn't dream of operating without property insurance, yet many are actually completely exposed on the employment side and view having EPL as a secondary policy. And then the numbers really back this up. There are over 88,000 employee claims filed annually, and that number has been rising for 3 straight years. And on top of that, there's large multi-employee lawsuits that are up 50% with increasing severity. Now for some good news on the insurance side, and I really just want to talk to our California brokers really quick. We're definitely seeing more carriers opening up in California with writing EPL. For a while, it was very tight and very hard to, submit to those carriers, but a lot of carriers are opening up now. Rates are definitely becoming more competitive, and retentions are also lowering in California. So for a while, a lot of carriers were at 50,000, 35,000 retentions, but we're seeing primarily across the board, retentions in California are at 25,000. So I just want to mention that we have access to multiple competitive EPL carriers, and a lot of our carriers, especially in California too, they do include the wage and hour and the third party coverage. So that's just something to keep in mind. So we've covered what EPL is, why it matters in the current market condition. But now let's talk about something very practical, and that's how do you actually sell it? One of the biggest challenges I think brokers face is overcoming client objections. So we've actually put together the most common pushbacks that you will hear and our suggestions on how to respond to them effectively. So overcoming EPL objections. Here are the 4 most frequent objections that you'll run into when presenting EPL coverage. I'm sure there's many more outside of this, but we just wanted to cover these today. So first, I don't need it. My workplace is friendly. This is very common, right? A suggestion that we just like to mention would be EPL covers you for claims like harassment, wrongful termination, and discrimination, even if they're made by a past employee or someone you never hired. These aren't covered by your GL policy. Or I always recommend ask an open-ended question. What steps do you currently take to prevent claims of discrimination or harassment in your business? That really gets a client, to start thinking. And then secondly, we're a small team. So one of our suggestions is most EPL claims come from businesses with under 50 employees. You don't need a big HR team to be at risk, just one bad interaction. So true. Not to mention, it's actually reported that 41% of all EPL claims are from small businesses. So really, EPL claims can impact any business of any size, and it's more prominent among smaller businesses because they tend to lack that expertise or experience to properly oversee recruiting or hiring, managing, firing employees, which subjects them to EPL claims. Third, we can't afford it. This is, where we suggest you reframe the cost. So I hear that a lot, but defending just one employee claim can run 30,000 plus. EPL is a fraction of that and includes access to legal resources before it ever becomes a lawsuit. I also want to mention there's the option of offering lower limits too at 250,000 or 500,000, just as an option. I know some companies have added EPL as a supplement or provision on their current BOP policy. But just want to mention, typically that coverage is insufficient. We always recommend offering a standalone policy with lower limits. And then finally, if they're interested, great, close with confidence. So these scripts are just short, clear, focused on benefits and risk, which I think is exactly how business owners like to hear it. And feel free to make these your own. Alexa's actually going to post a PDF file in the chat room so that you can make it your own. The key is really to acknowledge their concern first and then reframe it with facts. So next, we're going to go and jump into our cyber insurance overview. As we all can agree, technology is becoming more complex, and therefore actually so are cyber threats. So a cyber policy, it really is intended to cover what I have listed here on the slide. So your ransomware, wire fraud, phishing, data breach, and social engineering. It really is intended to cover the aftermath of any type of cyber incident. And I'm just going to touch on these briefly. So ransomware and extortion demands. This is still the #1 claim we see. And typically your cyber insurance policy would respond with ransom payment coverage, when appropriate, negotiation support, and also the cost of restoring systems and data. You have your wire fraud, business email compromise, your BEC. So these losses can actually be massive. I mean, in minutes, it can be 6 and 7 figure wire transfers gone. So cyber policies, they pick this up where your traditional crime or fidelity bonds may fall short. Your phishing and social engineering. This is also a root cause of most incidents, but your cyber liability policy is intended to help with the resulting fraud, data loss, and also the response costs. Data breaches and privacy incidents. So whether it's customer PII or employee records or protected health information, this triggers, your notification costs, your credit monitoring, your legal defense, and then your regulatory fines. Business interruption from cyber events. This is huge, right? When systems are locked or taken offline, your cyber insurance policy can help cover lost income and extra expenses that a traditional property policy could exclude. So here's really the key benefit I want every broker to remember and also share with your client. A cyber insurance policy typically provides your first party response and your third party liability coverage. And what do I mean by that? Your first party means the policy helps your client when they are the victim. And your third party means it protects them when they're sued or face regulatory action because of a breach. And then just an important note, I wanted to put your standard general liability or your business owner's policies, your BOPs. Typically, they exclude these cyber exposures. Excuse me. So having a standalone cyber insurance policy is really what fills the gap. Your traditional insurance policies, they cover tangible assets such as your property, inventory, hardware, and equipment. But the most valuable asset to cyber criminals is information. So that is really the purpose of a cyber policy. So that is the what, the core coverages that a good cyber insurance policy should deliver, and why your traditional GL and BOP policies leave businesses exposed. But now let's talk about the why it matters, because knowing the coverage is important, but helping your clients understand the real risk and financial impact is what gets them to take action. So we're going to move on. So why cyber insurance matters, risks and real world impact. So this is really where we move from policy language to real business risk, the kind of information that your clients want to hear. The first note is small businesses are prime targets. We kind of covered this a little bit in the last slide, but cyber criminals, they love small and mid-sized businesses because they often have those weaker defenses and also faster decision-making when it comes to paying ransoms. And then their high financial impact too. So the average cost of a cyber incident for small, medium businesses often starts around $120,000 and can go up to $164,000. And if you think about that number, it includes forensic notification, legal fees, system restoration, and also lost revenue. So for many of your clients, that kind of hit could seriously damage cash flow or even threaten the survival of the business. And then on the right, I wanted to put in a claim example. This is a real claim example that we see actually commonly. An accounting firm was hit with ransomware. Cyber insurance helped with a $90,000 recovery, $30,000 in business interruption costs, preventing far greater out-of-pocket losses and prolonged downtime. So think about that. That's $120,000 in total support. So it doesn't just help a little, it literally can keep the business alive and operating after an attack happens. So here's really the takeaway I want you to use with your clients. Cyber risk is frequent and it's expensive, and it's hitting small and mid-sized businesses hard. But the good news is that cyber insurance is actually one of the most effective and affordable ways to transfer that risk. The key takeaway really is to move the conversation from, do I need this, to how do we get the right coverage in place? And I want to bring this into today's marketplace so you can speak with confidence about current conditions with your client.
Hi, Lexi. Looks like we did have a question come in. The question is, do you have a cyber checklist for customers to use to implement best practices to avoid the risk of a loss?
Okay, good question. Okay, so cyber checklist for customers. I would say, just off the top of my head, prioritizing security measures. So your like endpoint security, having strict password control, so implementing that multi-factor authentication for added security. I would say regular software updates, also employee education and awareness. So, employees are educated well on how to recognize threats. But of course, consider investing in a cyber insurance policy just to mitigate any financial risk associated with any type of cyber incident. So that was a great question. So cyber today in our marketplace, why the risk is rising. So ransomware remains a top threat. Attackers are now using AI for smarter phishing and social engineering. So what used to be obvious scams are actually now harder for employees to spot. Under risks and trends and stats, here are some numbers you can use to quote with your clients, but a business in the US is actually attacked every 11 seconds. Over 3/4 of small businesses that suffer a breach report cost of at least 250,000. So these are some statistics just to use with your clients. And now here's the good news for you as a broker, and that's the market context. So cyber insurance capacity is strong. It's competitive, especially for your well-protected businesses. And what do I mean by that? Carriers, they provide better rating. They tend to provide better rating, and there's typically more carrier options for the business that do the basics right. So what do I mean by that? They typically look for things like your multi-factor authentication, updated and tested backups, and employee security awareness training. So they're really looking for like your security, what you have, your controls in place. So when your client has these controls in place, you often can secure better pricing and also broader coverage. So when you're sitting across from your client, you can confidently say, right, the threat is real and growing, especially with AI making attacks more effective. But the good news is the insurance market is competitive right now for businesses that take basic security seriously, and that's where I can help you. And then we commonly get a question, I've gotten it a couple times actually, about premium reduction strategies. So I just mentioned a couple. Inform your clients about measures that they can implement to potentially lower their cyber insurance premiums. And that's such as your strong cybersecurity practices, again, implementing that multi-factor authentication, and then also employee training. So now's the big question, right? How do you actually close the sale when your client pushes back? So we're going to go over some cyber objections like we did with EPL. The slide gives you ready to use client-friendly responses to the four most common objections you'll get when presenting cyber insurance. So first, I don't need it. So we put like a short, brief suggestion for that. But I would say really like educate on the purpose of the coverage and how a cyber policy acts as a financial safety net for the business owner. It's really a critical risk management strategy. It shouldn't be treated as a mere add-on. It really should be purchased as a standalone policy. I've gotten a lot of brokers recently reaching out about policies that aren't covering certain coverages on your typical standalone cyber policy. For example, social engineering is typically excluded on some of the add-on policies that they have. So yeah, it's definitely something to have a conversation with your client about because you want to make sure everything is covered. Secondly, we're too small. So again, 85% of breaches hit small businesses, not big brands. This one is powerful just because it really flips their assumption completely. And then third, it's too expensive. I get it, but compare $1,000 a year to 100,000 breach. One phishing email could bankrupt a small business or a small company. So you really are reframing the conversation from cost to risk exposure. And actually right now, cyber policy premiums are very competitive. It's a very cost-effective coverage. Finally, if they're interested, close strong. And these are just some suggestions we put together, but now let's talk about how to sell more EPL and cyber insurance. So I'm going to go through this briefly. I do see we're kind of running short on time, but these are proven techniques that successful brokers are using right now to increase their production in these two lines. So first, quote EPL and cyber on new business and renewals. We always recommend to cross-sell your existing book of business. It's a great way to win more business. When you tend to have more policies on the books for one client, your retention is greater at keeping those policies. Lead with claim examples, start with real stories, like the accounting firm ransomware claim we saw earlier. Offer the quote and emphasize value. Always reframe the conversation with your client from it costs money to it saves money. And then lastly, give them a refusal to bind form for decline quotes. This is really a professional way to document that you've offered the coverage. They chose to decline it, but it also protects your E&O and often makes the client think twice before saying no. And then really, I want to go into the next slide. Beyond just increasing sales, there's an even more important reason to make EPL and cyber a standard part of every proposal, and that's protecting you and your agency. If you don't offer these coverages and a client suffers a claim, you could potentially face an E&O claim. So, these coverages, I would just want to mention, should be purchased separately. The client really cannot get full protection by lumping everything into one policy. So it's really critical to quote them individually. Third, the clear best practice, always offer EPL and cyber to anyone with the exposure. Really any business with employees or that handles sensitive data, which is basically every business today. And then make it a habit. Every new business submission, every renewal should include cyber and EPL quotes. Document that you offer them. When you do this, you're not only doing the right thing for your client, but you're also professionally protecting your agency. So next question would be, how do we actually get these quotes? So CID, we make it very seamless for our retailers to obtain quotes. The slide's very short for that reason. For EPL, it's a simple application. If they've had prior EPL coverage, please include loss runs and a deck page so we have their expiration date, limits, target premium. For cyber, we actually have a cyber platform that is designed for our retailers to quote any standalone cyber risk that you have in minutes. You just need to collect basic information from your insured. So company name, address, industry code, which is very easy to look up with just a couple keywords, annual revenue, and then if they utilize MFA or have had a cyber claim. So, 6 pieces of information. And from there, you can actually get up to 9 standalone quotes from leading cyber carriers in the market. And what's really awesome about it is you'll be able to download the proposal pack, and they have each carrier quote side by side. So you can compare coverage, premium, and limits. It's just a very easy way to view it all. The packet also includes claim examples that are specific to the industry code that you put in, and it has a cyber glossary, definitions to the coverages. It's just a really nice packet that you get that you can send to your client. So the entire process maybe takes 3 to 5 minutes. I can walk you through the entire thing. Please give me a call and I can help you out with that. Alexa also, she included the link to our cyber platform in the chat room, so you can start using that right away. She also is going to send over a 16-minute demo video, which is going through the entire submission and quote process on the platform. So if you'd like to watch an example first before using it, I definitely recommend to click on that. It's super helpful. Again, thank you so much for your time and participation. I know we went a little bit over, so thank you for your patience, but please start submitting your risk to submissions at cidinsurance.com. You do not need an appointment with CID Insurance to submit business. Please feel free to reach out to me to ask about any specific risk, coverage details, or anything from the session. I'm here to help. Even if you have a risk, you're not sure where to go with it, please don't hesitate to call me, reach out to me. My email and phone number are listed. Our website is cidinsurance.com, where we have all of our recorded webinars, so all our past recorded webinars and broker tools designed for you to use. So please go on that website and check it out. I look forward to doing business with all of you. And again, thank you so much for joining. Have a great day.